We are the nerds. We are the nerds of the apocalypse.
I prepared some audio-visual stuff that you're not going to be able to see. So I'm going to flip my computer around at some point and show you guys the stuff. If there's something in here that you really, really want, you can email me or tweet me, and I will email it to you. I'll email you the program. I wrote 2 separate things that I use regularly. I guess I should start to tell you who I am. My name is Matt Hawkins. I'm the president of Top Cow Productions. It's one of the original studios at Image Comics. I started at Image in April of 1993. I was at UCLA. I actually have a physics degree. I have a master's in physics. And I was studying to go into the military-industrial complex when Image happened. And I started writing comic books, and 23 years later, I never went into the military-industrial complex, and I'm still writing comics. So, that's kind of my story. I'm kind of unusual. One of the things I always tell people about being in comics is my story is really unusual because I didn't actually read comics when I got into comics. I actually never read one. And so people sometimes get annoyed at me for that, but it was a different world in 1992, 1993. When I was at UCLA, I actually met Rob Liefeld, who I know is a controversial figure, but he and I became friends, and I started working for him, and we helped launch Image. And I was with him for a long time, and when his Extreme Studios company folded in 1996, I self-published a book called Lady Pendragon for Image Central for a couple of years. I did another book called Alley Cat. And then I went to Top Cow in early 1998, and I was at Top Cow. I'm still at Top Cow. So Top Cow is primarily owned by Mark Silvestri. It's also owned by myself and a company called Square Enix. Those are the 3 owners of the company. And we publish books. Witchblade, The Darkness, the film Wanted was based on one of our books. Darkness, there's been 2 video games. Witchblade, there was a TV series on TNT in 2001. There was a Japanese animated series in 2004 and 2005. And there's been a number of other things in film and TV development that have gone nowhere, hundreds. But I produced all those with Mark and several other people. And this mainly for me, I usually do what I call so you want to be a comic writer, so you want to be a comic artist. That's what I've tailored this for. It's basically to teach people how to break into this industry. If you have questions about anything else, you can ask here. Or I have a table, it's in the middle, I have no idea where it's at. But you can come find me over there, and I will talk to you today or tomorrow. I'll be here all day. I'm not sure what time my flight is. But how many of you want to write comics? How many of you want to draw comics? How many of you want to do both? Cool. Well, just to me, it's changed so much since I started. I mean, when I started in comics, people didn't use email. People didn't have, there was no internet, so, well, there was, but it was called the ARPANET back then. But CompuServe was a new thing, state of the art, and I'm sure many of you don't even know what that is. But no, so, comics has changed so radically, and there really are 3, maybe 4 ways to break into comics. I'm going to do those first, and then I'm going to specifically talk about what it takes to be a comic writer and artist. The first way to break into comics is to get a job in comics doing anything. Go to work at Marvel as an intern, go to work at DC Comics, taking out the trash. I mean, I'm serious. It's just, you get to meet these people, you get to learn who they are. Like when I started, I was writing letters pages, I was writing press releases, I was doing marketing work. That was in 93. The first comic I wrote was in 96. So I worked in production doing various things for 3 years before I ever actually wrote a comic myself. And I never had intended to be a comic writer. It was just sort of one of those things where, this might be fun to try. So I did, I wrote it, it worked, and I got the bug, and I think I've written a little over 300, maybe 400 comics, I don't even know. So it's cool when you look at a giant shelf full of graphic novels and you wrote them, it's kind of fun. Yeah, any questions straight off the bat, or should I just jump in? Anybody got any questions? Okay. I was doing the forum, sorry. But so that's the first way, is just to get into comics anyway. So you look at the job boards. The DC Comics is in Burbank, so you need to relocate to work for them. They have a job board that's on Warner Brothers. If you just Google DC Comics jobs, there's a board there, and you can apply for jobs. You need to relocate to Burbank. Marvel has an office in LA and an office in New York. So you could do the same thing where you could look for jobs and get a job in there. Here's the reason why having any job is better than not having a job. What happens is you get to know people, and then people go, I'd be interested in writing comics. And you meet the editor, they know who you are, you fill in for someone when someone else flakes. You get an opportunity, because the thing is, usually when people send in samples, The only time I've ever heard of people being hired off of samples was when someone was desperate, an editor was desperate for someone, they read something that day. It was just amazing coincidence of timings, and I've only known that that's happened once. I've been doing this, like I said, this is my 23rd year, and I can name probably 100 comic writers, and I can only think of one that was ever hired off of samples. So that's the first way, is just get a job and get your foot in the door. The second way, which any of you on the previous panel, I heard them talking about at the end, which I actually think is probably the best way to get into comics right now, is publish webcomics. Is to get online and put out a webcomic. And the main reason being is Kickstarter every once in a while will pop out a crowdfunding effort where I look at it, it's like, oh, they raised 50 grand, they raised 100 grand, they raised 200 grand. I'm like, who is this person? You know, I've never heard of this person before, I've never heard of this idea, and I'll go in and look at it, and then I'll go online and realize, oh, okay, this person has been doing this webcomic for free online for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. They've built their own audience, they have 6,000 Twitter followers, whatever it is, and then they finally were able to monetize it several years later once they built the fan base. So the way I kind of talk about comics today is the barrier to entry of comics based on the webcomic model is the lowest it has ever been. It is easier now to publish online than it's ever been. It is also much harder to make money. So the barrier to profitability is actually higher, but the barrier to entry is lower. And I think that's the same way with all entertainment. You want to be a movie maker? Make a movie, put it on YouTube. You might not make any money, but you get a movie made, right? So that's true of sort of anything. I mean, you want to write a novel, you write a novel, you put it up on Kindle, boom, it's out, it's available, people can buy it. You might not make any money. You know, I mean, these are sort of the realities of it. But the webcomic model is a smart one, and I've hired 2 artists and 1 writer from that specifically, where I've seen a Kickstarter that raised a lot of money. I reached out to them, I said, oh, who are you? Can I see your stuff? Or I'll buy it online. I'll read it, and I see this person has a unique take or vision on the world, and I'll hire him to write something. You know, that's kind of how that works, and I've seen that happen quite a few times. Sorry. I talk quickly, I'll slow down. The third way is samples. Like I said, it's very rare, especially for writers. Sending samples as an artist is easy, because if you send me a link to your work, I can tell whether you're good or not in seconds. I really can. And I've hired half a dozen artists over the years from samples. I've never hired a writer from samples for 2 reasons. One, I don't want to read it. I really don't, you know. And I told a story, I think I told you the story really about my wife and her friend. Yeah. My wife asked me to read a friend of hers script. And sorry for the story twice, but and I didn't know this guy. So I spent an entire day reading his script, and I went through and made the notes on it. I was looking at what was good, what was bad. I spent a great deal of my own time. I sent the guy an email with all the explanation of what I thought he did good, what I thought he did bad, and all these sort of things. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And heard nothing back. Not a peep, not a response, not nothing. About a week, 2, 3 weeks later, my wife comes to me and says, you know, what did you do to so-and-so? I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, oh, he thinks you're, this kid's in here, he thinks you're an A-word. And I'm like, what? And I was just so horribly offended by this. I'm like, you know, I spent my own time, energy, and effort for free. I mean, I would charge somebody $500, maybe $1,000 for that if they wanted me to edit their book, like that. That's like valuable insight that this guy was angry at me about now. And so I was just like, you know what, screw this. So I actually have a very self-titled sort of website called maptalks.com. It's like TED Talks, but Map Talks. And on there is it's a good resource because you can look at, I have ways to pitch. I have things not to do in pitching, and a number of things how to sell at conventions. So just general blog thoughts of mine that are ways of things and how to interact with people, how to follow up with people, and these kind of things when you're doing these kind of things. So just a quick take on that. And I think I said 4. I think there really is 3. But the best thing to show someone if you're looking for a job is an actual comment. You know, I mean, if you have and for me, it's like, if you hand me a comic that's actually a printed comic or send me a PDF online, I'm like, at least it might be fun. You know, if you hand me your script, I know it's not going to be fun. You know what I mean? So that's just the reality of it. So I'm going to start on the writer side. Unless anybody have any questions on that? Yes, sir.
When it comes to art, do you have like a simple pass or fail requirement?
The question is on art, do we have a simple pass or fail requirement? I guess the answer to that is yes. I think for Top Cow, because it's Mark Silvestri's studio primarily, we're probably a little more snobby about it than most. Yeah, I mean, for me as a writer, I'm looking, can this person tell a story? For me, it's not just about the quality of the anatomy or the illustration. Is this person able to tell a story between the panels? Is there something in terms of moving the time? Is there an action-reaction phase? Is this artist actually... I'll tell you something that's lost on modern artists is light source. Because so many pencilers and inkers now, or even digital people that aren't coloring, they don't factor in light sources because they're used to colorists doing it for them. And that's something that annoys me greatly. And I can almost always tell if there's a comic where the artist has not indicated light sources and shading, stuff like that. Inking is kind of a lost art, but textures in comic pages and art, there's filters now that you can do through Photoshop that sort of replace that. But original textures using toothbrushes and razor blades and stuff, it still has a weird sort of unique look that I look for and I like. But having said that, if you look at 80% of the books that publish, they're all digitally painted. A lot of it's about time, speed, and cost. A couple quick things on portfolios. Don't have hundreds of pages. No one wants to see it. Have 5 or 6 of your most recent pages that are really good. Don't show me your graffiti logos. Don't show me your design work. I don't care. I want to see 8 pages of sequential panel-to-panel artwork that shows me if you can tell a comic book story. I'm not going to hire someone because they're a good painter. If they're a good painter, they can do illustration shots. I get this a lot where people come up to me or they'll send me, I wanted to be a cover artist. I'm like, well, no one knows who you are, so sorry. The thing with cover artists is you want someone that's well known because you're looking to hire someone that sells books to you. So if you're a cover artist no one has heard of, no one's going to buy your covers. So that's why Alex Ross and Adam Hughes and these guys, they get lots of cover gigs because you put their name and their cover on a book, it's going to sell more copies. So if your goal is to be a cover artist, good luck. I can't think of a single person that's ever become a renowned comic book cover artist that didn't do sequential work first. Not any. Alex Ross was an interior artist, Adam Hughes was an interior artist. Even artists like Drew Struzan, who's the famous painter that did all the Star Wars covers and Star Wars movie paintings and all those sort of things. He tried to do some interior comic work, decided he wasn't very good at it. No one knows his name in comics, it's cover artist, but he's a very famous painter. Did I answer your question?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sorry. But I'm going to do writers first. You guys see that? Anybody? No, I'm sorry. I'm going to read it because you can't see it. But like I said, I'm at TopCowMatt on Twitter. My email is just matt@topcow.com, so it's pretty easy to remember. I'm on Facebook. If you Google Matt Hawkins on Facebook, I'm the first one that pops up. It's me and the South African rugby guy. Our Google alerts are interesting. I write here, so if you want to be a comic book writer, what's it take? And then I talk about talent and training. People always talk about English degrees and so on and so forth, but I guess having an English degree or a history degree might be helpful. Like I said, I have a master's in physics and undergrad in physics, and I have an emphasis in applied science, which has nothing to do with anything. That's why I have editors to edit my work, because my English is horrible. So you don't need to necessarily have good grammar to do this. Just make sure you hire someone or have a friend that can help you. Self-taught, online classes. I would say there's one thing that I know about every successful writer is they read a lot. And I can always tell when someone is pitching a comic book story to me that they only read comics. It's very obvious because their stuff is very derivative of comics. And I read fiction, read nonfiction, read a lot of stuff. One of my successful things in comics is I do things that are science-based, and the reason why I'm able to do this and no one else does is because no one can read the science journals. So I go and read Nature magazine, I read Scientific American, and I read through these things, and I get interesting tidbits. Like I'm doing a story now where I came across how we're able to write on DNA now. You can actually record on DNA like it's a hard drive. So there's a method of recording on it, which is fascinating to me. So I took that and I said, oh, that's interesting. So who didn't do that 10 million years ago? And then it gives junk DNA a whole new meaning. So what if junk DNA has all this encoded message like the book Contact? So things like that are sources of inspiration for stories. But creative writing and this is something I highly suggest. If you could find a writing mentor, this is something that I find very helpful. Talk about storytelling, the power of myth. Understand comic art. Some of these are books. I think the best book I've ever read on writing is Stephen King's book, and it's called On Writing. I've read that book about 12 times. I have it on my phone, I listen to it all the time, even subconsciously. And the key thing that book pounds in is your book needs to be 80% character and 20% world building. And the thing is with world building, and this is when you come and pitch something to me, people will come up and say, oh, I have this story and it's about, the art world and this art thing and this, that, and the other thing. They'll build up all the stuff that's very, very heavy plot. And then I'm thinking like, well, who's the character? Why do I care? What's the character's journey? How did they start? How did they end up? I mean, all these things are very important to me as a story, because if you think about a TV show you like right now, just pop it in your head. Well, why do you like that show? It's because of some character in that show. Usually is the reason for it. They might inhabit a cool world, like the X-Files has a cool world, a cool mythology, but if Mulder wasn't crazy and Scully wasn't, science and interesting, I mean, if they didn't have that weird sexual chemistry thing going on, would you like the show? I don't know if you would, you wouldn't. There's a reason why the 9th season sucked. Or was it 8th season? I don't remember. Whatever the last season was, it sucked, right? The reason is because they lost those characters and they lost interest in those characters. So you have to care, and see, the thing I love and I hate is when you talk to fans and they get in your face about characters and, oh, this character wouldn't do that. I'm like, well, I created that character and I'm the only one who's ever written that character. So if you're telling me that character won't do that, that's kind of a weird thing to say to me. But on the other hand, it's kind of cool because the people are invested in that character. And one thing I worked out with a lot of Hollywood screenwriters is we're in what I call a post-plot version of Hollywood right now, where think of the movie Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, that movie is all character, no story. Okay, I challenge you. Most of you are comic nerds like me, so you know the story with Infinity Gauntlet and Gems and all that. I challenge you to go to any non-comic fan and ask them what that film is even about, and they can't tell you. They don't know any of the story. They know Chris Pratt looks hot, this raccoon is cool, this tree says Groot. That's what they know. They know these little weird sequences and scenes. They talk about character bits. They talk about scene interactions. That's what people know. So take that and look at that and study that and realize if you can make someone care about a character, the story doesn't matter. I'm a writer and I'm telling you that. That's flat out. If you make someone care about the character and they care what happens to that character, your story then doesn't matter. Now it does. It matters a lot. But just something to think about. And I include in here, there's a thing, every writer and every artist should look at a thing called Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work. If you're a comic book artist or a writer or you want to be in this industry, you should study the history of it. Wally Wood is a very famous artist from the early days of comics, and he wrote this thing with these panels that say, these panels always work. And I don't know if you know how, the one thing that is was helpful to me early on in comics is to actually get copies of scripts from writers. There are a lot of these online. There's a website called comicbookscripts.com that has about 600 scripts that are there for free. You can go on there and download, All Kingdom Come from Mark Waid. You can download some Alan Moore scripts. You can find a writer that you actually like, download and study how they write these scripts. So there's a site that is available for that. This storytelling, Wally Wood's 22 panels that always work, is online, and it has sort of the panels that work. And it also helps when you can explain to an artist, because the one thing you have to understand about a comic writer is that you are in collaboration with an artist and an editor, usually. If you want to be a writer that doesn't get told what to do for the most part, write novels. Because if you want a pure writing effort, that's it. Because you write film, you write TV, you write comics, it's a collaborative effort, it goes through a lot of hands, and a lot of people are involved. If you want to write something that is kind of a pure execution of your vision and your vision alone, I think novels are really the only, maybe poetry. No one reads poetry though. I like poetry, but no one reads it. Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud, did you go read that? That's a really good one, and he has a sequel which I didn't like as much, but I think it's called Reinventing Comics. The classic How to Draw Comics the Marvel's Way. Again, this is something that gets dual purpose for writers and artists. You got to know what an artist thinks and how they work in this field in order to be able to work with an artist and tell them what you draw. When you, as a writer, what you write, there's two ways to write. There's full script and there's plot. I do both. Now, I work with artists that I know generally, and I will write plots. And I'll say, hey, this page is this, 4 or 5 panels, and this is what happens. If I'm working with a new artist that I don't know, I will frequently write full script, which means you indicate, you might say, first panel, establishing shot, New York skyline. Second panel, medium shot, 3/4 down angle, where you're looking down and say this is a car driving on the street. Third panel is a closer up side shot of the car. You see the person driving the car, you can see that they're on the phone and they're distracted. Fourth panel is them slamming in and killing, hitting someone on the sidewalk. Fifth panel is the person flying into the wall. Sixth panel is them in jail. Okay, that's a mini story, right? I just made that up. So it's just like, those are the kind of things that you can do, but you indicate that, like in your head, you can kind of see those panels and how they might be laid out. If you're a new writer and you're working with an established artist, they're going to hate you if you do that. You're better, less is more, and you want to follow sort of the artist's lead. Again, it's a collaborative effort, and I think a lot of that's expectation. Big one, notes and feedback, and ties into what I said earlier. If you can't take criticism or feedback, go into another field, because you're not going to make it in this field. I can tell you that right now. And the nice thing about comics and working with companies like Image Comics, like the indie publishers like us, is that our jobs, like my job, I edit some books. My job actually is not, I'm not an editor, I'm a writer, I'm a publisher, I have a bunch of jobs. So there are people at Marvel and DC and Dark Horse that their only job is to edit. So their job is to give notes. So if they don't give notes, someone might think they're not doing their job, so they're going to give you notes, whether they're good notes or bad notes. I'm not saying there aren't good editors, those companies there are, but the nice thing about smaller companies in many ways is since I don't need to give notes, my favorite thing is to read something and think, this is great. Rock and roll, I don't need to do anything. That saves me time, usually makes the writer happy. But the point being, realistically, you're going to get notes. And in some cases, I think initially, because I've been doing this for a long time, and I've gotten a lot of notes. I've gotten notes from Hollywood executives that I worked on the Power Rangers for 2 years, and getting notes on a stupid show like that really is weird. Because, it's just weird stuff. But anyway, that's a whole other panel. But no, getting notes, in many cases, I always suggest you read them, put them in the drawer, and pull them back out 24 hours later. And then try to work on it. Because inherently, it's human nature, that's the man, I don't want people to tell me what to do, whatever. Generally, you're going to automatically disagree with the notes, and many times the notes are right. It's just human nature. So put them in a drawer, go for a run, walk, do whatever you can, and then come back and try to absorb the notes and see if those notes will actually help you. And in many cases, depending on who it is, this is why if you could find someone that gives you good notes that you trust. There's a guy named Brian Hill that works with me that is one of the best dialogue guys I've ever known. And I give him my scripts and he punches them up for me. And the dialogue he does is invaluable. And every time I see something, I get kind of angry, and then I sit down and realize he's right. And so ultimately it makes me look better, so why not? So the point is, taking notes and feedback, it's not an easy thing to do. This is big. When you ask for criticism, expect it. Don't assume they'll tell you how great you are. I can't tell you how often I did this, where people will hand me something, or even art, and all they want to do is they want to hear, oh, this is great, hey, you're hired. Okay. The reality is that's not going to happen. I mean, I can only think of once or twice that's happened in the 23 years and the thousands of artists I've seen where we've hired people on the spot. So the truth is, you hand someone, you give them a leave behind, you ask for an email address, you follow up with them don't ever follow up with someone daily. You'll make them hate you. I usually say the quickest, never follow up with someone more than once a month. And I usually ask, I would tell people, ask them how often to follow up. So if someone says, hey, follow up with me in 2 weeks, do it. If someone says, hey, follow up with me in 6 months, do it. You just gotta piss them off. This is another huge note. You probably aren't as good as your mom tells you. Okay? Which is fine. This happens more for artists than writers. I can't tell you how many times I've met someone, and this is, have you ever watched American Idol, where you see people that suck singing, and they think they're really good? There's actually a psychological syndrome of that. I can't remember what the name is, dunghill something. If you grow up in like an area where you're sort of enclosed and you don't get exposed to other things, and your grandma tells you you're great, your art teacher tells you you're great, you go through this whole process and you get up to a point where you think you're great, and you might be okay. I'm not saying you're not, but the reality is that when you get into professional of anything, it's harder. My son thinks he's going to play in the NFL, and I really don't think he is. So I haven't said that to him. We're not recording this, right? Marketing. Okay, as a writer and as a comic artist, I heard the guys in the previous panel talking about this a little bit. If you're a marketer, you have to be a self-marketing machine. I live in Los Angeles. I have 2 teenage sons. I have 2 full-time jobs. I teach school. I teach at UCLA. For me to come here this weekend is not convenient. But I came here to market. I'm promoting my books. This is an area in the market I've never been to. When the promoter offered to fly me out and give me a free hotel room, I'm like, okay. But if you're shy, this isn't for you. Be a novelist. Shameless self-promotion is the name of the game. Social media is really the modern marketing methodology. You know, you need to have a Twitter, a Facebook, you know, I forget what they all are, but I have them all in one folder, so I can tell you. Instagram. I have all these things: Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, Facebook pages. Goodreads. Goodreads as an author is a valuable marketing resource. Hootsuite is a really good app because you can post to Hootsuite and post to all these at the same time. Tumblr, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Skype, Periscope, Facebook Messenger. All those, it seems like a lot, it is, but you know, we have 100,000 followers on our Facebook thing, and that reaches a lot of people very quickly. So you can. The other thing, the key is have something to say. I mean, that might seem obvious, but if you're not Kim Kardashian, you can't post stuff without having anything to say. That was a little funny, right? Sorry, I was waiting to see if it was funny. In terms of story, and this is like in pitches especially, and I have this detailed out in much more detail on my Matt Talks website, or if you email me, I can email you this. But usually you want to have a concept or a log line, and these are 1 or 2 sentences. Like when I pitch my book Postal, or I'll do Tide actually, I have right here. All right, what is the tide? What is the concept? It's a heist story. That's the concept. Okay. What is the log line? It's about a hacker who steals money from churches and gives it to charity. He's a modern day Robin Hood. Write what you want to know about. But that's, I mean, having a quick pitch, and if any of you come by my booth, I usually have a very quick pitch on stories, and I have a slightly longer pitch. When I can tell if people are into it. When you're trying to sell someone, it's usually, you can tell pretty easily if they're into it or not. If their eyes are starting to glaze over, they start looking around, you know, then wrap it up. You know, don't waste your time, don't waste theirs. I write here, write what you want to know. I think that's important. People always say write what you know. I think that's good. If you're a fireman, if you're a cop, if you've got some sort of unique field, like I know there's a lot of military here, if you've had some crazy shit go down in Afghanistan, write about it. You know, I mean, but I include write what you want to know, because for me, I write what I want to learn about, because that makes the research interesting. You know, if you write a story, like I wrote a story about called Wildfire about GMO, and it's a GMO conspiracy thriller. But I wrote it because my son asked me what a GMO was, and I realized I couldn't explain it very well, and it irritated me that I couldn't. So I did a lot of research, and that research I used as a story, told it as a film. The pitch itself, like when you're pitching, I'm going to give you, I've only ever bought 1 pitch from someone at a comic convention, ever. And I remember it so well that I'm just going to give you that pitch right now. It was a book called Inferno. We published it in 2001, 2002. We sold it as a film to Warner Brothers, and it didn't get made. But it was basically these 2 guys, and it was one of these weird experiences, caught me in an elevator, and I laughed, and they said, can we pitch you something real quick? And I'm like, well, we're in an elevator, give me the elevator pitch. And the guy just went straight into this. He was like, you know, it's in Jerusalem. These people are digging for a new Starbucks on some corner. They uncover these ruins underground. They bring in these people from the university to investigate it. They start looking at the ruins. They start to decipher the ruins. It opens up this gateway, and demons flood Israel in the middle of the night. So the U.S. and the Israeli militaries put together crack teams to infiltrate this gateway to try to shut it from the inside. And as they try to insert, they are all eviscerated on the entrance, because only those destined for hell can go to hell. So they have to do the dirty dozen thing, where they go find a bunch of rapists, murderers, and thieves to go into hell and save the world. The guy said that to me in the elevator. I'm like, oh man, that's cool. I saw these crazy people. I saw 30 dozen going into hell. I see, I just pictured something with no character, but it was so visible that then what happened then was we then went and sat in the lobby, and I talked to the guys for 2 hours. And I asked about the characters and all these sort of things, and they broke down everything they wanted to do. And the main character's name's John Dante. Dante's Inferno. It's a little on the nose. He was a guy who was in the military who put the team together that died the first time, so he was really upset. And as he was about to go in, he was going to go in with the Dirty Dozen group. He's going down, and this guy comes up that he doesn't like and says, you know, John, you're a good man. I know you're not destined for hell. Shoots him in the head and goes in with the team. And it's like, it's one of those moments that are like, I was like, whoa, I can see that in the film. You know, I mean, just imagine these bad guys, these murderers, guys, they're not getting along, and they go into hell, and they got to save the world. I mean, it's just those kind of elevated stories that you can see. You know, you just visually see it. Yeah, there it is. KISS, I actually learned this back when I used to go to church when I was a little kid. The pastor taught us to keep short stupid, keep simple stupid, in terms of sermons and plots. This is a universal thing. Comment there is on format, and I'm not going to get into that. Okay. Conventions. This is a convention. Soda pop, right? Soda pop. Don't tell those guys. Until I came here the other day and asked him why it was called Soda City, I was wondering if it's like a home of Pepsi or something. I was a little disappointed about it. But there are a million conventions everywhere. If you want to be a writer or you want to be an artist in comic, you're already ahead of the game by just being here. Okay. Unfortunately, Columbia, South Carolina is not a mecca for comic books. Don't take offense, please. But the big conventions, you want to get hired and work in comics. These are the conventions to go to. Go to New York Comic Con, go to San Diego Comic Con, go to WonderCon, Comic-Con, C2E2s in Chicago, WonderCon's in Anaheim. I don't know why I think Comic Booth, that's a Houston show. That's not a good show to go to for getting hired. I talked about social media. Oh, that's a little kid. Remove that word. Don't be a jerk. No, look, we're all people, right? I'm a human being, so you come and talk to me. If you're nice to me, I'm inclined to be nice to you. It's really that simple. I mean, you guys are from the South, so it's a little more obvious, but you'd be surprised how unique that sounds when you start traveling the world. Being friendly, asking advice, these are all good things. I'll tell you one thing, never do. You want to work in this industry? Don't ever belittle other people's work. Okay? It immediately tells everyone on our end that we don't want to work with you. Okay? And because if you come in and people do this because they think it makes it cool, like, oh, I think so and so at this company whose work sucks. And I'm like, okay, that's a mental note. I'm not working with you. Because those are the kind of people that go online and talk trash, and there's a certain mentality of that. You want to go into a comic shop, hang out with your friends, and talk about what you like and what you don't like, fine. But when you're going to talk to people about a job, don't belittle other pros' work to try to make yourself look better, because it just makes you look worse. If you want to be a writer, write every day, even if it's just 10 minutes, every day. I think it was Ernest Hemingway who said he would get up and write 10 pages, and then he'd be at the bar by noon. You know, I mean, no, seriously, he's a crazy British guy, and he's American. That's the same thing with, I think H.P. Lovecraft used to say that too. He used to say, if you write 1,000 words a day, then 4 months you got a novel. I get up very early. I'm usually, my best writing time is about 4 to 7 a.m. And I get up because I'm an early riser. I hit it hard, write for 2-3 hours. And I write a comic a week, and that's the one I write. On occasion, I have to make extra time to do it, but in general, that's the only time I need. 3 hours every day. I know guys like Stephen King writes. If you read on writing, one of the things he says is write 4 hours a day, 5 days a week. If you write 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, you'll finish your work. You need the other time for research, you need the other time for stuff. Because the thing as a writer is you're always working. Okay? When I'm driving and kind of zoning out, I'm working. So I'm thinking about weird stuff. When I'm at a convention like this, and I'm standing there for 10 minutes by myself, because whatever's happening or whatever, I'm often thinking about stories, and it's a great time when you've got passive time all the time. The most productive writers I know, almost always, have the Notes app on their phone full of things all the time. Notes app. Just a Notes app on your phone. Because what do you always have with you these days? You got a phone. It used to be carrying around a yellow pad, but that's kind of passe. So I try to be good like the kids today. So I have it on my phone. You do that, and then even if you forget about it, you'll see it later. Another thing. If you want to be a writer or an artist, this is for both, be prepared for isolation. Okay? You work in a room by yourself. oftentimes weeks or months at a time. If you do not like that and you need a lot of social interaction, probably not the work for you. And I'm just telling you, it's a lonely, sometimes isolating career. It's just one of those things I recommend that if you really desperately need social interaction on a regular basis, being a writer or an artist is probably not for you. Don't plagiarize. It seems like an obvious one. Don't trace other people's work. Reference no-nos. I mean, that seems pretty obvious. You'd be surprised how often it happens. I can't tell you how many cons I go to where I see what I call these print jockeys, and these are people that are selling traces of other people's work and trying to sell it as a print. That stuff drives me nuts. Do y'all know the difference between creator owned work? You know what work made for hire means? It's important to know in the industry. Work made for hire. Like if I hired you to write a Spider-Man story, that's called work made for hire. That means you're being hired, you don't own it. Like creator owned is the tithe, I own this. All these works I do, I own them all. So if I sell this as a TV show, I get to keep the money and Marvel doesn't. If you create a character for Marvel Comics and then they go and make a movie off of it, you're actually entitled to nothing. Nothing. I mean, the guys, Lynn Wein created Wolverine with, gets nothing. He doesn't get money for it. Some people do, like Rob Liefeld makes a lot of money on Deadpool because he signed a contract specifically when he did that. This is one of the things why I always tell people, when you go to Marvel and DC, never give them your best ideas. You know, save it for yourself. I mean, it's easier for me to say because I never had to do that. But I was saying, keep your best ideas to yourself. Portfolio is a digital portfolio. I said this earlier, best sample is an actual comic. Big no-no. Never email attachments to people. Ask first if you can send them a script. The best thing to send is a link. You have it on your Facebook, you got it on your DeviantArt. All you artists, if you don't have a DeviantArt, you're crazy. I mean, you should have a DeviantArt with your art up. And you should click on the thing that says they can make prints of your stuff and you get to keep the money because do you know who Stephen Sedgwick is? Who does Sunstone, does Death Vigil, did After 99 with me. Him and his wife, they make $10,000 a month selling prints through DeviantArt. A month. That's $120,000 a year. It's a lot of money. And here's the thing, I have my email set to where if you send me anyone ever sends me anything over 10 megs, it automatically rejects the email, and I never see it. So, because people I work with, they know not to do it. Follow-up editing. I say no more than once every 3 months, but you can do it once a month. Unless they ask. I mean, again, be friendly, don't assume they remember you. Another bad word, sorry. If someone's rude, just move on. You know, these seem like simple things, right, that people should know. You'd be shocked. This is an incredibly small industry of editors who all talk to each other. So if you tick off one editor, the other one, I guarantee you, if you go and talk trash to some Marvel editor, I guarantee I'm going to know about it within about 48 hours. It's a small industry. Here's one thing to realize. How many comic book writers do you think there are that work full-time in comics? There's about 200. There's 800 people in the NBA. So when you start looking about that, that's a small number. You have a 4 times greater chance of being in the NBA than you do writing comics. And that's the writer portion. Anybody have any specific question on that before I move on to the artist? The artist one I'm going to move quicker, only because a lot of it's repetitive. Because I did these as separate things. Any questions? You? Try? So if you want to be a comic book artist, talent and training, most of the great artists I know didn't go to art school. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go. I was saying there's a lot of natural gifts and talents in art, but learning how to hone it. But most of those great artists like Mark Silvestri, who never went to art school, he was mentored by Walt Simonson, okay? And so he worked with an artist that was a greater artist before him who helped make him who he was. Mark Silvestri then trained Mike Turner, Dave Finch, Billy Tan, a who's who of the great artists of today, in my opinion. You know, all these artists, Joe Benitez, you know, all these artists that are just fantastic A-list artists in Marvel and DC now, a lot of these were hand-trained by Mark Silvestri. The Joe Kubert School, I think it's a good school. It's probably my least favorite school when people come to me and say, hey, I went to the Kubert School. The reason being is because everyone always assumes they're automatically going to get a job out of the Kubert School, and the Kubert School is not terribly discerning about who they take. So I can only think of one artist I've ever hired out of the Hubert School, a guy named David Macchiato. Cal State LA Art is a great program. Cal Art's another California program. I think I was in California when I wrote this for California people. But there's Savannah College of the Arts. Actually, I did one of the best. And that's actually half a dozen people I've hired over the years from Savannah College. And the reason is because that college is a little more discerning about who they take. The requirements to get in are a little harder to get in. The School of Visual Arts, SVA in New York is fantastic. I've only ever met two artists. The one being comics that came from there, and they both are working professionally in comics. I have no idea what their requirements are. I talk about finding a mentor. Again, that is key. And today, that could mean you're working with them online. The best thing, because when we started with comics, and until about 10 years ago, we all had studios, and we'd have like that network of little tables that people would come in and work together. That's gone. I don't think there's a single company with a studio like that anymore, just because of costs. Everyone works spread out, and everything's through the internet now. But if you can find, what I would say is if you know there's an artist, and I'm not trying to sell out Sanford because I know he lives in the town, but there's a guy named Sanford Green who's local artist. I'm just going to use him as an example. I don't know if he needs someone to erase his paper. You know, I mean, those are the kind of things where if you're a wannabe artist and you can say, hey, do you need any assistance? Do you need any line help? Do you need someone to spot your blacks on your paper? Those are the kind of things you ask if you're an artist, ask a local artist, and see if they can do it. Because there's a weird thing about it, and again, this is where being in the field at some job at all, there's a weird osmosis factor, where just by being around this stuff, you kind of pick it up and learn it. Like, I think I know a lot about comic art and comic art styles, and I can't draw. You know, just by being around it for so long and being around so many great artists, you pick it up. See, this is that same panel from the other side. Same thing. Yeah, same thing. Yeah, I knew this was going to be quicker. These are the books that Mark Silvestri really recommends. They're Bernd Hogarth's books, and they're drawing dynamic hands. Almost every really, really good artist I know has a drawing table with 4 or 5 mirrors set up. Because when they're drawing like a hand, they'll look at their own hand in the mirror and they'll draw it. I know a guy like Joe Jusko does a lot of photography. You know, he does a lot of photographs and uses that. There's nothing wrong with taking a photograph, maybe tracing an outline, and then going in and drawing over top of that. I actually don't. To me, there's no problem with that. I know some people don't like it; it's an aesthetic. But there's all different ways to learn. But Bernd Hogarth, the great thing about Hogarth, and this is what Mark learned from the early Marvel bullpen in the early '80s, was they would make you come in and they would make you draw 50 pages full of heads. So it's just a head. Like, okay, we need you to draw heads from every angle. You know, okay, do 2 pages of heads from a slide up angle shot, do a 3/4 down angle shot, do an eagle eye shot, do a worm's view, you know, all these sort of things. And when you read books like this, you pick up the lingo. I probably just threw some words that you don't know what they mean, but they all mean something in the industry. This is one that's just on how to draw dynamic hands. And there's a lot of books like this that Hogarth has published. Yeah, it's the same note. Same note. All these are the same, except for this. Portfolio in person. I mentioned this a little bit, but I'll be a little more specific. The best thing, if you have an art portfolio and you want to come show it to me at this show, the best thing you can show me is 8 pages. That's it. It's 8 pages of panel to panel of the same story. And the best thing you can do is do it as a Spider-Man or a Batman or a Superman or some character of Walking Dead. Because I can't tell you how many times I've said, this looks skewed, it's anatomy. Oh, that's my character. That's how I draw. I'm like, oh, okay. That's coming out. But 8 pages of sequential storytelling art of known characters. The reason being, if you're drawing Batman, I know whether you're drawing Batman right or wrong, very quickly. You can have several cover pen-up illustrations, but I would put it in the back. Other stuff is fine, but useless. This is back when I was a little nicer about it. I did this about 10 years ago. Now I don't like to see that stuff anymore. It just pulls it up. The worst thing you can say to me is, oh, this isn't my best work. Because every time that happens to me anymore, and I know people probably think I'm a jerk, I just hand it back to them and I say, well, show it to me what it is. I don't want to waste time. Neat, organized, portfolio type binders for ease of flipping through. Don't hand somebody a bunch of dog-eared, dark papers. You know, they're scattered. I mean, it's fine, but try to show some professional, like you're actually trying. If you really want feedback, this is something I highly suggest, is bring plastic. If you come to a con like this con is not as busy as a lot of other cons. So you could probably, especially if you come tomorrow in the afternoon, bring your art, go to someone like Sanford or someone else that's an artist, and ask them if they'll just show you a couple tips. You're going to get plastic, you lay it over your art, and have them draw over top of your art with a Sharpie. It's not going to be in detail, but it'll give you an idea. I mean, the one thing I'm always looking for in art is action-reaction. You know, I like to see the fist pop back and then the guy flying back, not just the guy flying back. You know, I mean, sometimes that works, but always think action-reaction when you're drawing. Action-reaction. That's important. That's all the same. I've been droning on for a while. I don't even know what time it is. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
You mentioned webcomics as their entry. Do you think there's any difference between people who publish their webcomics on Tumblr versus like have their own hosted domains and that kind of thing?
I don't even know what Tumblr is. What is that?
Tumblr.
Tumblr. I think, what's time now? Am I good on time? Or I don't even know. I don't know how long time.
Oh yeah, you're playing.
Oh, okay, good. I think the more public, the better. Because here's the thing: if your website is your name, the chance of someone stumbling across it is 0. If it's on Tumblr, there's a decent chance someone can stumble across it. Plus, people share things. I think I always, and this is where if you're on social media, have something to say. Because if you build up a following, people might see your work, have something interesting to say. I'm generally more of a fan of people being nice, but I've seen people that have gone on a whole campaign. You know, where they're either on to the left or the right, or they're doing this, or they're for this or that other cause, and they make it a cause. You can do that and make a voice for yourself, but realize if you go out like that, you're going to anger people on the other side, and you either need to learn how to tolerate that or use that to fuel the people that will be on your side to build a following. It's like, you know, you look at Trump. That guy's built a huge following now off of I'm doing exactly what I'm talking about. So those are the kind of things. But to answer your question, I do think it's better to do it on Tumblr. I think it's good to have your own site. You know, they're pretty cheap with Squarespace and these things now. But best thing is have a DeviantArt, have a Tumblr. Why not post it in 10 different bases? You know, I mean, why not? You know, and the other thing I always tell people is there's one thing about Amazon. If any of you self-publish on Amazon, if you need to get at least 10 reviews, even if they're all negative, to get past their first layer where they'll show the book in searches. So, I mean, if you have like that, because they have so much content on Amazon and some of these other things, because Comixology, I think, is the same way, that you need to have a certain number of clicks or likes or people that comment on it. The more that is, the more you'll go into their SOE, their search engine optimization, where they'll put you at the top of the list. That's again why Facebook, Tumblr, people are already there. I think the question is do you want to create a destination site where people have to come and find you, or do you want to go to where people already are? That depends on who you are. You know, if you're Quentin Tarantino, you probably create a destination site and get your fans to follow you. If you're anyone else, 99% of everyone else, you can't. So, other questions? No one has any questions? Yes, sir.
Of all the television shows that you've watched that you felt that were butchered, I think it's human nature that we have this as creators. We feel that what we can do is better. What series would you do better, or what movie would you do better? Or at least
the question is what TV series would I look at or film and think that I can do it better? Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, the problem with film and television is it has so many people involved. I mean, if you can think about a movie you actually like, I usually point to a single person that was the creative dominant force behind it. There's a reason why Cameron, Spielberg, and some of these people, their films are sort of always good, or generally always good, is because they can tell everyone else in the industry that they can say that. I thought of 4 other colorful epithet ways of saying that, but they can say, no, I'm not going to do what you want. Screw you, you know? But for me, wow. Yeah, you know, it's interesting. How many of you watch Strange Things that Amazon or Netflix, right? I really like that show. I tell you, there were things about it that drove me insane, you know, and the reason is because that was originally written as a film. I can tell you exactly, and I actually checked this and it's true. That was written as a screenplay originally. And because screenplays are getting harder and harder to sell because the mid-range of films are gone. It used to be there was a whole range of films between 20 and 100 million that were made every year. Now every film is under 20, which we call micro-budgeting or small film, and over 100, which are tentpoles. So the entire mid-range of film is essentially gone. So a lot of screenwriters who used to sell films in those ranges have shifted to TV. Strange Things was written as a film. They then transitioned it to a TV series, and I just felt like it just dragged a little bit. I thought it was awesome, but I felt like it dragged quite a bit. And they really captured sort of the 80s Spielberg aesthetic. It's funny because I looked online to see what people complained about that show. They thought Winona Ryder was annoying because she cried all the time. Well, it's because they have to repeat the same emotions and the same actions. In a film, you wouldn't repeat those things over and over and over again like they did in that show, because they're stretching a 2-hour film into how many episodes was it? 10? 8? So it's like, it was 50 minutes, what was that? 6 minutes. They stretched a 2-hour film into a 6-hour film. So when you do that, you got to do a lot of padding, you know? So I use that as an example of something I would change, because I actually like it a lot. You know, I told people I know to watch it. Any stuff I don't like, I don't really know a way to make it better. You know, like Guardians of the Galaxy, I really liked, but I wish plot made a little more sense. You know, I mean, to me, I look at stuff that I actually like, and I'm like, oh, what would have made that a little better? You know, versus like there was this god-awful horror movie I saw recently called The Pyramid or something, and it was just so wrong on so many levels and so stupid that I hate it when people do things that make no sense. You know, that are completely. I understand and fear people make bad choices, but people don't do it all the time for, you know, anyway. But that's a good question. That's interesting. I try not to belittle other people. Just like I said, I'm always trying to sell stuff into Hollywood. Last thing I need is someone hearing me trash their work. So I always try to better the good things. But yeah.
My question is, what are your thoughts on fan-made comics? Like, for example, some comics on Tumblr are fan-made from Steven Universe, just turned to comic format here and there.
Are you talking about like fan fiction?
Yeah, more or less.
I have mixed feelings on it. I'm okay with it as long as I don't try to sell it. You know, I mean, I think there's a big issue with, and it's a hard venue to get into, but and I know people get mad at Paramount when they go after this film, fan film that was made, even, but you know, there's a weird entitlement in the world right now where people think they're entitled to everything. Personally, I like fan fiction quite a bit. I like it, you know, but in Japan, there's a whole subgroup where they make hardcore pornography out of everything. You know, we did Witchblade over in Japan as an animated show. I went over there several times to help promote it and work with the people on it. And I was shocked when I went into some of the comic stores. The comic stores physically have like a speakeasy component where you go into the regular store, and then there's this door over here, you go in the door, and there's this whole other area that's all porn comics. Like crazy hardcore stuff, and it's all like pirated stuff. It's Dragon Ball Z having fun with this person or that or that. It's kind of mind-boggling. And they hentai, I think they call it. It's this whole other world, and it is a little shocking to see your own characters, get plowed. But no, I mean, for me, I'm not a big fan of that. But and I don't mean to be crass, sorry, but that's a real thing. I like it when it's good. Is that horrible to say? Is it horrible to say? If it's good and I like it, it's based on one of my characters, one or more things, I think it's cool. If I look at it and it's horrible, I'm like, man, I wish it wasn't here. But you don't really have that choice. Rules of Kindle, you guys heard of that? Kindle has a thing called, I think it's called Worlds of Kindle. And there are several universes, I think Babylon 5 is one of them, and to where the IP holders, people that own those characters, have actually authorized people to sell fan fiction in those universes. So you can actually write stories set in those universes that you can then sell on Kindle. You know, I don't know if you realize that, is it Twilight or one of those was like a fan fiction of something else? Or no, 50 Shades of Grey was a fan fiction of Twilight. That's what it was. It was originally written as a fan fiction of Twilight, and then it was sold in the mommy form of the king. So, no, it's interesting sometimes how that stuff works. And there's a whole world out there of pirating and torrents and comics. And again, I know a lot of people on my end of the field have really strong feelings against torrenting. I have mixed feelings, because I have 2 young sons. I don't let them do it. But I've also been to conventions like this where I'll have people come up and buy books for me to get signed, and I ask them sometimes how they know my work, because they didn't have to sell it. They just go, oh, I really like your work. This, that, I think you signed for me. And I'm like, oh, how do you know my work? And then sometimes they'll just admit they've read the pirated files, and I'm like, okay, taking your money now. So it is what it is. I just know that it's changed. It's a little harder when you're a self-publishing person to tolerate someone pirating your work. The one thing I'll tell you is if you do publish and people pirate your work, not pirate to rip it off, but pirate it to read it for free, they wouldn't have bought it anyway. I kind of feel that way. I don't think they wouldn't have spent money on it anyway, and they might eventually spend money. So that's why I have mixed feelings. So that's a long-winded answer to a tough question that is vexing IP lawyers and copyright and trademark attorneys right now, because no one really knows what to do about it. Because the internet is a wild west. It's opened up all these opportunities, and it's really hard to police. Because about 10 years ago, when a lot of this stuff first started, we used to have a cease and desist that we would send to the places that you would post these comics. So when someone would post Witchblade 138, I would send a cease and desist that would get taken down. You start doing that regularly, what happens is they publish it as Switchblade, and they have codes, and you have to go to message boards where they have codes for them, and then they call them other things, and it becomes this whack-a-mole thing where it's just like, holy shit, it's not worth the time. And then you realize you're spending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day, and as a small publisher, it's just a waste of time. So about 8 years ago, I gave up on it. But just to give you a number, we published a book called Magdalena, where we put one of the issues up on all the torrent sites a day before it came out, because we wanted to be the first one up. We put a pristine torrent, and we actually embedded in the file a tracker that when the file was opened, it called back to the website that we had a counter on. So everyone that opened the file, not downloaded, everyone opened that file, we got a number. We sold 14,000 copies through the direct market. There was, I think, 250-some thousand people that opened that file. Wow. So what's that, a metric of 20? You know, I mean, it's so 20 times the people were reading the pirated file that were actually paying for it. So, yeah, it's not an easy thing. So. Last question. That is the last question. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Well, I'm in there. If you guys want to come talk to me more, come grab me more. I'm just gonna go back. I'll be back in a few minutes. I'm here all day tomorrow. Thanks, guys.